Discover the amazing moment a disabled girl asked her uncle, "Why did my stepmom leave me?" Lily's question echoed in the tiny wood-paneled kitchen, shattering the fragile sense of security her Uncle Jake had worked so hard to build. Her voice, laced with confusion, pierced through the kitchen air, causing his heart to seize. Why did my stepmom leave me? Her innocent eyes were wide, filled with hope for an answer that wouldn't come. He stood rooted to the floor, desperately searching for words that could possibly make sense of her hurt. The note had been vague, an unfamiliar signature signing off a chapter in their lives he could never have anticipated. A fractured family portrait had become even more fragmented. He recalled the last time they had all sat together at the dinner table, the laughter, the stories, the warm feeling of togetherness. Jake felt the floor shift under him, weighted down by the unspoken pressures of the world. What would he tell Lily, in her 10-year-old mind brimming with fear and anxiety, as whispers echoed in hallways at school? Would all of this matter? Her abilities, her worth, fade in the face of doubt? As these thoughts spiraled, he realized he couldn't afford to let her see his own uncertainty, yet it was there, churning inside him like a storm. Jake knelt and took her small hands in his calloused ones, brushing his thumb across her knuckles, trying to ground both of them in this moment. Sometimes people leave for reasons we don't understand, he began, but his voice felt flat, the words lacking the power to lift the despair that loomed. The ache in his chest intensified. He hated that he could only be a shield against the whispers rather than a solution to them. He needed to talk to her, their dynamic shifting beneath the surface. That evening, they picked up brushes and paints, starting their new shared journey into art. The smell of wet paint filled the air as vibrant colors danced across the canvas, a distraction from the shadows creeping at the edge of their lives. Lily seemed more alive with each stroke, her laughter a fleeting reminder of happier days. But he knew the countdown was on. These half-painted canvases could not shield her from real-life challenges. Before they continued, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days passed, their little world of color and creation began to feel fragile, like a balloon about to pop. The upcoming art show loomed, a chance for Lily to share her hard work, but also an unbearable risk. Jake sensed her rising anxiety. Each brushstroke was tinged with questions that would echo on that stage. What if they didn't see her talent? What if they saw only her differences? Would they pity her? Would whispers transform into outright condemnation? The even broader world outside felt unyielding. The fear of societal judgments draped over them like an ever-thickening fog. Uncle Jake. She'd whisper on the evenings when shadows seemed to stretch longer. What if they don't like my work? Her voice would falter, that worry spilling into every corner of her heart. He met her gaze, strained with affection, yet shadowed by uncertainty. How could he protect her from pain that might never end? And in that eye contact, a fierce bond was palpable, yet an unspoken question lingered. What does it mean to be valued and loved in a world that overlooks those who are different? The impending art show stood as both a beacon and a cliff, a precipice that would define their future. Would they jump together, or would they crash if the world turned its back? The weight of revelation pressed down upon them, the emotional tension building, ready to erupt as the day approached. The days crept by with an oppressive slowness, each moment pulsing with the weight of vulnerability that hung between Jake and Lily. The prospect of the art show now loomed larger, a specter that haunted their creative sessions. Every brushstroke felt suffused with pressure, each colorful splash on the canvas a silent testament to their unvoiced fears. Although they shared laughter over anecdotes of the past, Jake could feel uncertainty nipping at his heels, an urgency that pushed him toward introspection. Sitting late one night, surrounded by half-finished paintings, Jake allowed himself to reflect on what it meant to be a pillar of strength. As he looked at the vibrant hues representing Lily's dreams on canvas, He felt a flicker of resentment toward the world that had abandoned her. How could he safeguard her against experiences that threatened to bruise her spirit? He knew that his protective instincts had grown into a primal necessity, one that transformed his perspective on life. In the stillness, Jake considered his own fears. He had spent years avoiding the spotlight, hiding behind the safety of anonymity. But now, as Lily prepared to step forward into her own light, he realized for the first time that he needed to confront his own apprehensions. The visual imagery displayed before him echoed his internal conflict. He wanted to bolster Lily's confidence while grappling with his crippling self-doubt. He could not show her that embracing one's identity sometimes meant facing a world that didn't understand. "Uncle Jake," Lily had asked earlier that day, her eyes imploring, "do you think I can really do it?" The way she spoke, with a blend of hope and trepidation, shook him. It pressed against the confines of his heart, challenging him to respond beyond the predictable words of reassurance. Ignoring his impulse to sugarcoat reality, he took a steady breath. "Lily, courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about standing tall even when you are. It's okay to be scared." His voice was low, steady, but inside, chaos spun. Would admitting fear validate hers, or would it provide her the freedom to confront her own? That night, he made a decision. Together they would face their fragility, transforming it into strength. He reached out to a local art teacher who was known for her compassion and experience in nurturing young talents. The news brought a bittersweet thrill. They would work with someone who could genuinely guide Lily, but it also exposed Jake's hesitation to step out of his comfort zone. As they met in the studio days later, bright lights illuminated the space, overwhelming yet oddly invigorating. Jake watched as Lily picked up her brush, her movements becoming more confident with each passing minute. Her creativity flowed freely, and something within Jake shifted. He spotted a talent in her that was unbound by societal perceptions of disability. A raw, brilliant flame, unrestrained by the insecurities that shadowed their relationship. Suddenly, he realized that the art show wasn't merely a platform for Lily. It became a turning point for him. He would not only support her, he would embrace his role as her partner in this journey of creating visibility, a test of their resilience against the doubts that had been festering in their lives. Yet as the days counted down to the show, doubt began to resurface within him. Would he have the courage when it mattered? The fear lingered, an expected visitor at the doorstep of his consciousness. He hadn't wrapped his own inner dilemmas in color yet, nor challenged the judgments he feared would rise from others. As the stark realities of the upcoming day settled into his mind, Jake found himself drawn back to the instructive conversations they shared about art and expression. But for every planning session they engaged in with anticipation, there was an unsettling induction of anxiety related to external scrutiny. What if, at that pivotal moment, he faltered and let her down? Suddenly he understood. It was time for him to dig deeper, uncovering personal strengths hidden under layers of self-doubt. Maybe, just maybe, he could learn to confront the world alongside her. The tension hung heavily, underscoring a truth. Art had always been about vulnerability, a canvas full of possibility that risked exploring the shadows within. As the day of the art show drew closer, Jake felt an undeniable shift. He wasn't simply paving the way for Lily's emergence into the world, he was also preparing himself to step out of his hidden corners. And together, they would ascend, or plummet, in front of those who grazed the edges of their insecurities. The chill of impending truth frosted the air, both for him and for Lily as they headed towards this shared journey. Before him lay uncharted territory, where potential lay balanced on the precipice of fear and faith. Would they emerge stronger, or would the judgments of the world strip away their evolving vitality? The moment approached that would demand more than talent. It would call for an unwavering sense of self, power, and bravery. Was Jake truly prepared to liberate himself from the chains of doubt to grasp his own fate, standing tall alongside Lily? The day was coming, and nothing could shield them from its impending reality. The morning of the show dawned crisp and clear, the world outside bathed in a light that seemed to pulse with life, stark contrast to the storm churning inside Jake. The sun crept through the blinds, waking him with the stark reminder that today was Judgment Day, not just for Lily, but for him too. He glanced around the room, the unfinished canvases echoing his own hesitant brushstrokes across the canvas of life. Today was not merely about showcasing Lily's talent, it was their shared reckoning. As he prepared, Jake's thoughts swirled. He pulled on a shirt, his fingers trembling slightly as he fastened the buttons, each click of the fabric against fabric serving as a countdown. What if he couldn't muster the courage? What if he slipped back into the shadows, allowing insecurity to swallow his resolve? Anxiety gnawed at him, constricting his chest like an iron vice. Then it struck him, a revelation he hadn't anticipated. Today wasn't just about confronting a room full of onlookers. It was about deciding which version of himself he wanted to present, one rooted in fear, or one channeling his own emergent truth. As he stood in front of the mirror, he saw more than uncertainty. For the first time, he glimpsed a man fraying at the edges yet resonating with newfound strength. The drive to the gallery promised to be an endless road, a workshop of anxiety replaying every imagined scenario. Jake caught a glimpse of Lily in the back seat, her excitement contagious yet laced with her own tenuous nerves. The way she chewed on her bottom lip, the way her fingers fidgeted with the paintbrush she clenched tight. She mirrored his own anxiety, and in that moment, he saw their connection, their mutual fragility. "Uncle Jake," she said, breaking the silence, her voice trembling just slightly. "What if people don't like my art?" Her question sliced through his burgeoning resolve. It forced him to confront his instincts once more. "Lily," he began, pulling from the deepest reservoirs of his own hard-won lessons, "art is about expression. It's about sharing who you are. And if people don't get it, that's on them, not you." He pressed his lips together, feeling the gravity of his own words. Had he believed them enough to apply to himself? The gallery emerged from the horizon, a modest structure that suddenly loomed like a mountain. The exterior was unremarkable, but beneath it lay the weight of anticipation, of hopes, fears, and dreams waiting to be unveiled. As they stepped out, the midday sun brazenly illuminated their path, welcoming them to a stage that felt both intimate and immense. Jake's hand brushed against Lily's, a reassuring anchor despite the tremors of uncertainty within. They stood at the threshold, breathing in the fresh air, preparing to enter a realm where insecurities could either become shackles or wings. Inside, the buzz of conversation mingled with the soft music that filled the air, creating a pulse that resonated with the rhythm of Jake's racing heart. People began to fill the room, each face a canvas of expectations. His gaze drifted toward Lily as she stepped away, finally allowing her art to breathe outside of their studio. Her vibrant colors splashed across the walls, fragments of her soul pouring into the open. But Jake's attention became locked on the entrance, where the art teacher he had invited walked in. Her presence was a stark reminder of his own doubts. What if she saw right through him? What if she assessed him solely as Lily's protector, rather than as an artist in his own right, someone deserving of his own journey toward self-discovery? That moment of reflection snapped. The time had come to face the questions he had avoided for too long. Could he bear the weight of scrutiny alongside Lily? Would he finally step into his truth? Or would he retreat, allowing fear to dictate his actions? As spectators began to admire Lily's work, Jake felt a spark within him ignite, a fusion of pride for his niece and clarity about his own path. Today wasn't merely Lily's debut, it was his chance to emerge from the shadows. But as he stepped forward, ready to embrace this new visibility, he couldn't shake a chilling thought. What if, at that defining moment, the world still viewed him through the lens of past perceptions, never recognizing his growth? He felt the walls constricting, the pressure mounting with every heartbeat. The moment hung on the precipice of anxiety and promise. Both he and Lily were on the verge of discovery. Would the world embrace them? Or would vulnerability prove itself too perilous? Jake inhaled deeply, setting his resolve, looking at Lily, who had become the embodiment of courage. The day was unfurling its story, but would he be ready to co-author it with her, ready to confront everything that came next? The gallery was alive with color and chatter, yet to Jake it felt muted, an echo of his internal war. As he stepped further inside, merging with the throngs of onlookers, he noticed the reactions to Lily's art. Gasps, laughter, admiration, each moment unfurling like petals before him. Yet despite the warmth surrounding them, an icy core of doubt gnawed at Jake's insides. He wandered through the crowd, pretending to admire the vibrancy of the paintings while instead wrestling with the spectral shadows of his past. Each expression on the faces around him felt like a mirror reflecting his insecurities. What if they saw him not as an artist but as a man tethered to others' expectations and failures? What if they judged his existence through the prism of his past mistakes, of opportunities lost and paths untaken? He turned to observe Lily once more. There she stood, mingling among the guests, her eyes alight with excitement, a buoyancy that seemed worlds apart from his somber reflections. As she explained the stories behind her pieces, a proud smile illuminating her face, he felt a jolt of realization. This was not just her moment, it was theirs. Each brushstroke she laid down was a declaration, not just of her creativity, but a challenge to embrace authenticity. She was his mirror, reflecting the courage he subdued for far too long. But that deep-seated fear whispered again, clawing at the edges of his resolve. It spoke of his past failures, of public displays where his inadequacies were clear for all to see. Could he withstand that flood of scrutiny? Could he advocate for both of them when he trembled at the thought of being fully seen? Jake caught sight of his art teacher, who wove through the crowd with a discerning gaze. Her eyes landed briefly on him before she turned to study one of Lily's paintings. Jake's heart raced. How could he meet her gaze? How could he endure the weight of expectation without crumbling? But that thought, it was an avalanche, each release burying him deeper in fear. Yet in that moment of trepidation, Jake made a conscious decision. He would not allow the spiraling anxieties to imprison him. He had been Lily's mentor, her anchor. Now it was time to turn the gaze inward, toward his own self-determination. He took a step toward her, fighting against the crowd, his purpose sharpening into clarity. He reached Lily just as her laughter echoed through the room. The sound dragged him from the depths of contemplation, grounding him. "Hey, Lily," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm so proud of you." Her response sparked a flood of warmth within him. "Thanks, Uncle Jake. It feels really good to share." She paused, her eyes searching his, filled with questions that seemed to flutter just beneath the surface. "Are you okay? You look a bit lost." He considered her for a moment, that youthful intuition slicing through layers of his timidity. "I'm just processing everything," he admitted, still feeling the tug of vulnerability. "It's a big day for both of us. But seeing you shine fills me with hope." Lily beamed up at him, a bright spot in the tumult of the night, her innocence prompting something powerful in Jake, a determination to overcome his insecurities. As the proud uncle, he wanted to ensure that she never felt the fear he had borne. "Come on," she said, taking his hand. "Let's show them what we can do." Together they navigated through the sea of onlookers, where judgment resided at the edges, but was overshadowed by the awe of discovery. Jake could feel the tension waning, replaced by a resolve born from both love and respect. They stood side by side, two participants of creation and expression, ready to engage with the world on their terms. As they approached the heart of the gallery, something shifted in Jake. He felt the weight of others' opinions lessen, overshadowed by the vibrancy of Lily's art and the intensity of his own desire to be understood. But just as whispers of doubt began to fade, a disconcerting figure loomed at the threshold of his mind. A past acquaintance, someone from his darker days, who had walked in unannounced, casting a shadow over their illuminated moment of triumph. Would Jake face this specter of the past, or would he allow it to cloud the day meant for self-affirmation? The air thickened with anticipation, crackling with the promise of confrontation, laying bare the choice that lay ahead. Jake's eyes scanned the crowd, and there he was. Ethan. A face from a past he'd tried hard to forget, one that conjured images of disappointment and regret. Ethan's presence felt like a chilling wind slicing through the warm atmosphere of the gallery. Jake could feel his heart quicken, the weight of unresolved emotions pressing against his chest like a vice. "Hey, Jake, long time no see," Ethan called out, his voice cutting sharply through the mingled laughter and chatter. With a forced smile, Jake turned to meet him, battling an urge to retreat. Each step Ethan took toward him felt heavy, laden with the memories of a shared history that he'd rather leave in the shadows. What would Ethan say? Would he dredge up stories of failures, of artistic dreams quashed by personal demons? Part of Jake wanted to step back, to guard the fragile sense of growth he had begun to cultivate in himself. But another part, enlivened by Lily's presence, pushed him to confront his fears head-on. "Yeah, it's been a while," Jake replied, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. Ethan leaned closer, his voice lowering conspiratorially. "I heard you're doing some mentoring now. Sounds like a noble gig, but how do you handle the pressure? You were always, well, you know." He waved a dismissive hand, the vagueness of his words sharp enough to cut. Anger flared beneath Jake's skin, and he fought the urge to lash out. In the depths of his frustration, clarity emerged. This was a moment calling for strength, a chance to reclaim his narrative. "Actually, I've learned a lot," Jake countered, meeting Ethan's gaze with newfound steadiness. "And let me tell you, mentorship isn't about pressure. It's about encouragement, helping someone else find their voice." The surprise flickered across Ethan's face briefly before he masked it with a smirk. "That's rich coming from you. Didn't you falter when it was your turn?" Despite the jibe, Jake felt a balm wash over him. Those words, while meant to wound, began to lose their power as Jake stood grounded in his truth. This moment was a testament not only to his own evolution, but to Lily's burgeoning talent. He owed it to her to stand strong, no matter who stood against him. Before he could respond, Lily whispered, "Uncle Jake, are you okay?" Her innocent concern cut through the tension, compelling him to focus. He turned to her, and in her eyes, he saw trust and admiration. Her presence fortified him, a shield against the insecurities that still lurked. Jake took a deep breath, his heart steadying. "I'm good," he assured her, then faced Ethan again, feeling a flicker of defiance ignite. "You see, Ethan, it's different this time. I'm no longer stuck. I've stepped away from the shadows." Ethan's expression shifted, a mix of disbelief and something oddly like fear carved across his features. He had seen Jake at his lowest, and now, witnessing this resolve seemed to shake him. "What's changed?" Ethan demanded. It wasn't a question Jake was obligated to answer. Yet the opportunity to define his new self was too tempting to resist. "I'm learning to be brave, and it's liberating," he declared, his voice anchored in emotion. "I've spent too long worrying about being accepted for who I was, but now I'm ready to embrace who I'm becoming. You should try it." With that, Jake turned back to Lily, who wore an encouraging smile. The doubts that had crept in felt like ghosts vanishing into the light. For the first time, Jake felt poised on the precipice of change, wrestling his past into submission, instead of letting it define him. But as the evening continued, he couldn't shake the unease woven into the fabric of his triumph. What would it take to maintain this newfound strength when echoes of the past lingered just outside the gallery? With each passing moment, he became aware that tomorrow would bring its own challenges. A day filled with choices that could either ground him or unleash old fears. And deep within, Jake grappled with a realization. The battle was far from over. The question lingered. Was he prepared for the next wave of confrontation, or would he ultimately succumb to the weight of expectation once more? The tension built quietly, but it churned with the promise of resolution just beyond the horizon, closing in on him like a storm. Jake awoke to the soft, ethereal sunlight filtering through the curtains of his studio. The previous night's confrontation with Ethan still replayed in his mind, each second thick with the weight of what it meant to stand his ground. He sat up, feeling the remnants of that surge of defiance and the accompanying worry. The adrenaline from the gallery had dulled into a creeping apprehension about what lay ahead. Today was a mentoring session with Lily. A moment he had anxiously anticipated, yet now it felt daunting. What example was he setting for her? Was he truly prepared to guide her with the wisdom he had recently begun to uncover? The bitterness of his past seeped into his morning, testing his resolve anew. He shook off the lingering shadows, pushing up from the bed and forcing himself into a routine. As he prepared breakfast, Jake mentally listed the points he wanted to discuss with Lily. creative expression, the importance of authenticity, how to embrace vulnerability without fear. These were not just themes he intended to teach. They were deeply personal challenges he was still navigating himself. An hour later, the doorbell chimed, and nervous energy coursed through him. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door to Lily's beaming face. "Uncle Jake, I've been working on my painting. You have to see it." Her excitement was contagiously uplifting. "Of course. Let's get to it," he replied, attempting to mirror her enthusiasm, even though his mind was still tethered to Ethan's words. In the makeshift art area Jake had curated for Lily, vibrant colors spilled from her palette onto the canvas, forming a burst of life that both amazed and inspired him. Yet, as she worked, an unanticipated issue arose. "Uncle Jake," she began cautiously, her brush hovering above the canvas. "Can I ask you something?" He looked up, seeing the seriousness in her eyes. "Sure, ask away." She put down her brush, her brows furrowing in the childlike way he had come to find so endearing yet heavy with meaning. "Why did my stepmom leave me?" The question hit Jake like a punch, visceral and raw. He quickly assessed the depths of her inquiry, understanding the gravity behind it. He hesitated, seeking the appropriate words. Memories of his own childhood surface, of abandonment, of feeling unworthy and alone. This was not just a question about a stepmother. It touched on fears he'd buried deep. "Lily, sometimes people leave for reasons that have nothing to do with us," he began, opting for a delicate balance between honesty and protection. "It can be about their own struggles, their own fears. It's confusing, but it doesn't mean you aren't lovable or that you haven't done anything wrong." Her innocent gaze pierced through him, and for a moment, he was uncertain if his words provided solace or merely compounded her pain. He wondered if he was even capable of delivering the comfort she needed. "What if I'm not enough, Uncle Jake?" she pressed, her voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, Jake recognized the connection to his own doubts, the echoes of a shared experience. He realized that mentoring was not merely handing down life lessons. It also required vulnerability. He could share his battles, show her that courage wasn't about never doubting but facing those doubts head-on. "Lily, let me tell you something important," he said with a firm sense of determination. "Everyone struggles with uncertainty, even adults. I've faced many things that made me feel unworthy too, but learning to embrace who we are, flaws, fears, and all, is a part of growing strong. You're already incredible just by being you." Her eyes sparkled, not with complete understanding, but perhaps with the seeds of acceptance. Jake felt a twinge of pride, a flicker of hope amid his own lingering doubts. He had stepped into an active role in her life, without realizing that he was also confronting his own insecurities through her questions. Just as they were settling back into the rhythm of creative expression, a staccato knock shattered the moment. It was heavy and relentless, echoing the inconsistencies of their earlier conversation. Curiosity gripped Jake, but so did apprehension. Who could it be? What potentially unresolved past was lurking at the door now? Returning to the uncertainty he had just started to work through felt disconcerting, and yet oddly fitting. He sensed a deeper challenge brewing, one that would further test not just his strength, but his newfound perspective. Taking a breath, Jake turned towards the door, ready to face whatever lay beyond it. The question loomed. Was he truly ready for what was about to come? The door opened slowly and Jake's heartbeat quickened. The figure standing there sent a ripple of déjà vu through him. It was Ethan, the source of his recent turmoil. His face, usually so animated and confident, bore a weight that seemed out of character. Yet there was a steely determination in his eyes, conveying a message that sent an alarm through Jake. "Can we talk?" Ethan's tone was flat but urgent. He stepped closer, the faint scent of cologne mingling with the crisp morning air. "Now's not really the best time," Jake replied, casting a glance back at Lily, who was observing the exchange with keen interest from her spot by the canvas. The vulnerability he had just shared with her hung in the space between them, and he wasn't ready to let it be overshadowed by their previous confrontation. "Please, just a minute," Ethan pressed, his voice low, almost pleading. Jake felt the weight of his indecision. The last moment he and Ethan shared had been a clash of egos, and here was the man who had, moments ago, made him question his self-worth. But now, Ethan seemed different, almost fragile. Taking a deep breath, Jake stepped outside and closed the door behind him. The air was thick with tension, almost oppressive. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I messed up," Ethan began, shifting uncomfortably on his feet. "I shouldn't have said what I did. I guess I'm just struggling to understand why I exploded at you. You're still figuring things out just like I am." Jake narrowed his eyes, suspicion dancing in his mind. "And that's supposed to make it okay? You think that just saying you're struggling makes it easier for me?" "No, but maybe it'll help you see that I'm not the enemy here." Ethan's fist clenched and unclenched at his side. "You're growing, and I didn't like how that made me feel. I'm scared. Are the things you're discovering going to push you away from me?" There was a rawness to his confession, a crack that hinted at deep-seated fear. Jake felt the stirrings of empathy but fought against it. The memories of their past turf wars flooded back, the unspoken rivalries, both personal and professional. "You know, I've worked hard to get where I am," Jake replied, his voice steady but edged with hurt. "It's not about pushing anyone away. It's about finding my voice, my space in all of this. You need to confront your fears, Ethan." Ethan's jaw tightened, revealing the battle he fought just beneath the surface. "I know, but watching you stand against me, it made me feel like I was losing my place in my own life." A silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of their shared histories. Jake's thoughts drifted back to Lily and what he had just said about vulnerability. It was the very battle he was facing himself, how to confront the parts of himself that felt unworthy and resentful. "Maybe we both need to work on that," Jake finally replied, the defensive walls he had built slowly crumbling. As they spoke, he could sense a shift, a tentative bridge being constructed between past grievances and the promise of evolving dynamics. "But choosing to confront that fear takes more than words, Ethan. It takes action." Their words hung in the air, a tangible thread of understanding weaving through the space between them. Jake, now both mentor and student, felt an undeniable connection to the lesson unfolding. At that moment, he realized that honesty wasn't simply about telling truths. It was also about listening, even when it hurt. Just then, he heard a giggle behind the studio door. It snapped him back to the present, a reminder that they were not alone. The urgency of their confrontation pulled at him, but so did the laughter of an innocent child. "What if this is the time we stop playing games?" Jake said, first to himself and then to Ethan, a challenge in his voice. He opened the door and stepped inside. The atmosphere shifted again as Lily smiled up at him, holding a bright new canvas, beaming with pride. "Look, Uncle Jake. I added something special." Jake glanced at Ethan, who followed him into the brightly colored studio. What lay before them was more than a canvas. It was a symbol of potential harmony. But in the back of Jake's mind, the lingering question remained. Could they truly outline a future, without being trapped by their past? As he examined the strokes of brilliant color on Lily's canvas, Jake felt a faint stirring of hope. Together, they could navigate this uncertain journey, one brushstroke at a time. Yet a nagging thought began to intertwine with the budding optimism. Had they truly resolved anything? Or was this just the calm before another storm? Jake could sense challenges waiting on the horizon, both within himself and in the fragile relationship with Ethan. The instinct to assume responsibility for everything brewed quietly beneath the surface. Moments like this were fleeting, and he wondered if they were just signs of unsaid conflicts waiting to erupt. "Are you ready to dive into this painting with me?" Lily asked, the innocent brightness of her spirit shining through the tension. He smiled softly, amid his swirling thoughts. "Yes, let's create something amazing together." But even as they picked up brushes, uncertainty loomed, a whisper of doubt that perhaps nothing was truly resolved. What would they discover when facing their own reflections? Would they transcend their past, or would it drag them down once again? As they began painting, each brushstroke felt like both a release and a potential pitfall. Lily, with her infectious enthusiasm, wielded her brush with an untrained yet earnest energy, while Jake tried to match her intensity. He glanced at the colors dancing on the canvas, a blend of chaos and creativity, a metaphor for the inner tumult he felt. The vibrant hues were an unwitting reminder of the complexities he was grappling with, both in his work and personal life. With each stroke, memories of his confrontation with Ethan replayed in his mind. They had only scratched the surface, unearthing vulnerabilities that he now knew were shared. He felt overwhelmed by the duality of his life, the professional aspirations colliding with personal struggles. In that moment, he caught himself questioning his own motivations. Was he truly in this for the passion of art, or was it the thrill of proving himself against a former rival that fueled him? "Uncle Jake, look," Lily called, pulling him out of his spiral. She had created a wild swirl of colors, a stark deviation from her previous careful designs. The vivid chaos sparked something within him, an unfiltered representation of freedom. Such a childlike honesty was what he needed to reclaim his own voice, to embrace the messiness that life could bring. "That's beautiful, Lily. You've really captured the spirit of the moment," he praised. But guilt nagged. He could feel Ethan's lingering presence behind him, a silent audience to this exchange of genuine delight. Here was a child who expressed joy and emotion without having to filter it through societal expectations, a stark contrast to the conflicting dialogues he and Ethan had shared. Jake turned, catching Ethan observing quietly from the doorway, an unexpected softness hiding behind his usual bravado. The two men shared a moment of connection, unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. It provoked thoughts about how vulnerability, once perceived as weakness, was reshaping their relationship. They were carving out a space for honest dialogue, not just between them, but in themselves. But the moment didn't last. As Lily painted on, carefree in her artistry, Jake's mind began to whirl again with the complexities of adulthood. He envied her simplicity, wishing for a simplistic answer to his own daunting questions. What did it mean to pursue passion without letting fear derail him? "Do you think it's okay to be scared?" Ethan's voice came unexpectedly, weaving through the silence. Jill's cheerful painting filled the air while the heaviness of their adult concerns loomed. Jake turned away from the swirling colors and met Ethan's gaze. "I'm starting to think that being scared is a part of growth. It means we care about what we're doing." Ethan nodded slowly, as if grappling with the truth Jake had unintentionally shared. "Then maybe facing that fear is the real challenge." The words hung heavy, each man confronting the weight of those thoughts. Jake knew they didn't possess the answers yet, but for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. They weren't just two rivals anymore. Perhaps they were allies amidst their struggle, battling similar fears. Lily chimed in, oblivious to their underlying tensions. "Can we make it even crazier? Let's add sparkles," she exclaimed, tugging at their sleeves to bring them back to her whimsical world. They laughed, and in that laughter, lightness emerged, lifting some of the weight from their shoulders. But as they began to sprinkle glitter on the canvas, Jake felt the doubts creeping back. What lay beneath the surface of this moment? Was this merely a distraction from deeper issues that threatened to rise again? He resolved to not let fear hold him back, yet those unresolved questions lingered. Would he and Ethan navigate this complex relationship, or would they become tangled in the past once more? "Lily, do you think it's good to paint your feelings?" he asked suddenly, hoping to redirect the conversation into deeper waters where meaningful revelations might emerge. "Of course. You can show everyone what's in your heart," she replied, her innocence grounding him amidst the chaos. As their laughter continued, Jake realized that this creative space could be a metaphor for a greater journey. A canvas not just of colors, but of emotions and relationships. Would the evolution of their shared experience lead to deeper understanding, or would it merely serve as a temporary balm for unresolved pain? He looked at Ethan, who had begun to mirror Lily's suggestions, experimenting with colors in a way that was both childlike and earnest. Would they be able to rise above their previous conflicts, embracing their vulnerabilities? Or was this just the beginning of another conflict brewing beneath the surface? The question lingered ominously, a reminder that confrontations were not easily settled, and the journey of self-discovery was fraught with potential for both failure and growth. The paintbrushes became an extension of Jake's thoughts as he dipped into vivid colors that splattered their canvas like a mirror to his psyche. The chaotic energy Lily had introduced was cathartic, yet amid the joyous play of color, the realities of his world pressed tighter around him. He watched the interaction between Lily and Ethan, a dynamic shifting slowly but steadily into something more inclusive, an understanding that hovered just out of reach. Ethan was now kneeling beside Lily, engaged in a vibrant conversation about their respective paintings. Jake could see the corners of Ethan's mouth lift at Lily's infectious excitement. The sight brought a small smile to his own face, but it was bittersweet. Could warmth ever truly flourish between them, despite the past? Jake's mind raced, contemplating the unfilled spaces, the lessons yet to be learned from this unexpected partnership with the very person he had always viewed as an adversary. "Can I use your yellow?" Lily's voice cut through his thoughts, prompting a barely perceptible nod from Ethan as he handed her the well-used tube. The moment struck him. It was an exchange filled with trust, something he yearned for in his own relationship with Ethan. Jake realized that in their own way, they were all letting pieces of themselves merge into the chaos of creativity, an unspoken pact to explore vulnerability without fear of judgment. He picked up his brush and paused before the canvas, wrestling with conflicting intentions. Why was he so compelled to prove his worth through this art? Was it to showcase his skills, to reclaim a space long tarnished by rivalry? Or was he trying to create a platform on which he could comfortably navigate his tumultuous emotions? "Here's my favorite part," Lily exclaimed, pointing towards a section in her painting peppered with sparkles like stardust. "It feels like magic." Ethan leaned closer as Jake watched, seeing the moment through a dual lens of admiration and envy. Why couldn't he express magic in the same way? What was holding him back? "Wouldn't it be great if we could share this magic with everyone?" Lily's bright eyes glistened, her innocent enthusiasm igniting a flicker of determination within Jake. There it was again, the paradox of vulnerability and strength. "Exactly that," he said, heart quickening. Her innocent perspective offered him the insight he desperately needed. But sometimes, sharing your magic means showing your fears, too. The words felt heavy, yet liberating as they streamed out unplanned, capturing the dynamic that had slowly shifted within their painting circle. Ethan's gaze met his, and for a heartbeat, the tension lifted just enough to reveal the fissures of possibility. "Maybe revealing fears is indeed what we need," Ethan said quietly, a newfound openness in his voice. Jake felt a swell of triumph rush through him, an impulse to embrace that connection. They were edging closer to understanding and acceptance, but beneath the temporary elation, doubt loomed again. Would they maintain this bond or revert to their entrenched positions? Could the pain they'd shared transform into something more constructive? As if sensing the undercurrents between the two men, Lily smiled and chimed in. "How about we paint a picture of all our happy memories together?" The suggestion ignited a spark. What if they could paint not just what was, but what could be? Jake grasped the brush once more, channeling anxiety into hopeful strokes as they began to brainstorm moments of joy. Laughter at the park, shared meals, and quiet evenings immersed in art. Creating this new narrative of connection became a collaborative effort. Jake inhaled sharply. Within the colorful chaos, deeper lessons lay waiting to be unearthed. Each layer they painted hinted at the possibility of shared pain after shared laughter, healing through creative expressions. But as they mixed colors and shared stories, Jake felt an impending weight pressing in with each shared laugh. There was still a cloud of unresolved conflict hovering above them, threatening to mar the brightness of their emerging bond. "I just hope we can be honest about everything," he sighed, catching Ethan's eye and knowing that this honesty would be crucial for their evolution. "Yeah, me too," Ethan agreed soberly, the fabric of their dialogue thickening. Jake sensed a turning point here, a moment that could either unravel their blooming understanding or solidify it. With every color they threw onto the canvas, an invitation to reconcile floated in the air, waiting to be seized. Could they truly confront not just their fears but the past's grip on their future? The budding friendships and the colors on the canvas beckoned, but Jake could feel the shadows lingering, whispering that the true test was still to come. The question pressed hard against him. How much longer could they navigate this emotional landscape before the truth would demand to be faced? The days that followed the art show transformed into a momentous chapter for Jake and Lily. Jake gradually embraced the completion of their collaborative piece, a vibrant representation of their journey together. The chaos of colors echoed the complexity of their experiences, each stroke demonstrating personal growth against the backdrop of fear and insecurities. It was art infused with life lessons, merging the innocence of Lily with Jake's quest for self-acceptance. In the following week, Ethan reached out. His tone was apologetic, the judgment that had once cluttered their interactions replaced by a candid readiness to connect. They sat down over coffee, each man wrestling through the nuances of their past. The conversation shifted between laughter and serious reflections, allowing them to acknowledge their fears without drowning in them. "Jake," Ethan began, searching for the right words, "I've realized I often projected my own insecurities onto you. Watching you take those leaps made me confront my own fears of inadequacy." Jake nodded, recognizing the authenticity in Ethan's admission. The vulnerability hung in the air like the vivid colors they had splashed on the canvas together. "I understand, Ethan. I used to think that avoidance was strength, but now I see it's about facing what we fear most." This exchange marked a critical shift. They were no longer adversaries but allies in their respective journeys. With each conversation, the shadows that had once loomed large began to recede, replaced by understanding and support. Meanwhile, even amidst the evolving dynamic with Ethan, Jake noticed a pronounced change in himself. He embraced opportunities at his job he had previously shied away from, engaging as more than just the supportive figure in Lily's life. His creative endeavors flourished, becoming a conduit for both professional growth and personal expression. Jake began presenting his work at local galleries, confronting the fear of judgment with a newfound resolve that radiated strength. Lily's enthusiasm for art blossomed too. The art class she joined nurtured her talent and confidence, transforming her anxiety into joy. Taking her to exhibitions, Jake witnessed her flourish, sharing her story through her work. Her vibrant personality was contagious, proving that hesitation could be overcome by embracing one's gifts. One sunny afternoon, Jake stood before her latest piece, sheer pride swelling in his chest. "Lily, you've created magic here. Your talent is truly shining." She twirled in delight, beaming up at him. "But it's our magic, Uncle Jake. You helped me see it." The recognition struck him deeply, a tangible testament to everything they had conquered together. As the weeks turned into months, the fabric of their lives underwent a remarkable transformation. No more did guilt weigh heavily upon Jake for his past. He learned to share vulnerability, celebrate it as strength. He sought to empower Lily, and in turn, empowered himself. The relationship he had forged with Ethan evolved into a bond built on mutual respect, providing a safety net for the exploration of their respective journeys. On the day of Lily's art show as part of her Young Artists exhibition, they stood side by side, nervous but excited. Jake felt grounded, absorbed in the growth that had unfolded within him. He scrolled through the crowd of supportive faces, friends, family, mentors, with no trace of fear lingering at the periphery. Instead, he sensed a profound sense of belonging, a unique bond unveiled through the openness of both heart and spirit. "Are you ready?" he asked Lily, the anticipation reflecting in her wide eyes. "I can't wait to share my art with everyone," she exclaimed, her excitement undeniable. As the crowd gathered, Lily presented her work, captivating hearts with her emotional renderings. Jake watched, pride flooding through him. In that moment, amidst laughter and connection, he understood that transformation didn't just come from growth, but from acknowledging oneself fully. This was not merely a celebration of art. It was the celebration of resilience, of showing up despite fears, of embracing vulnerability as a pathway to strength. The room erupted into applause as Lily concluded her presentation. Jake's heart swelled with satisfaction. Together, they conquered their doubts, revealing the profound beauty within their shared journey. As they walked out of the gallery that evening, Lily clutched his hand, her spirit radiant. "I'm so proud of you, Uncle Jake," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. In that moment, Jake's heart swelled with justified pride. They had conquered not just the art show, but the insecurities that held them captive. They stepped into the world, ready to weave their stories into the tapestry of life consistently. Each day became an opportunity for exploration, connection, and creation. A narrative they would continue to build together, forever anticipating the vibrant journey ahead. The lesson was clear. True fulfillment came not only from personal achievement, but also from fostering genuine connections that uplifted both oneself and others in their lives. Now, as their shared canvas continued to expand, Jake understood that every brushstroke added richness to the intricacies of life. The vibrant palette before them represented growth, resilience, and the beautiful complexity of human connection, celebrating every color of their shared journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this magical conclusion. You need to show your support now. Don't wait even one more second to share.